Lancer, a mud and lasers tabletop role-playing game of modular mechs and the pilots that crew them. As a Lancer, you pilot a mech as unique as yourself. You are, by training, luck, circumstance, or work, one of the best. In this era near the Golden Age, you have one question to answer above all. Who do you fight for? Lancer is a tabletop role-playing game with 4 pillars of play: rules light, fluid, narrative play outside of the mech, modular, progression-based mech customization where narrative, setting, and character are imbued in the gear, systems, and equipment your character chooses. A play loop that encourages narrative advancement through narrative and tactical play, and gritty tactical combat on a grid or hex-based play space. This is a review of Lancer, the role-playing game. Let's dive in. So here we have the Lancer role-playing game core rulebook by Miguel Lopez and Tom Bloom. Copyright, or at least for the second printing, is 2024, published by Massive Press with Dark Horse Books, which is actually really interesting. And this cover is the standard edition cover, but if you go to the Massive Press website, you can actually get an alternate cover, which looks pretty rad. I wish I had known about that before I pre-ordered this on Amazon. The book can, of course, be divided into a few different sections, such as building a mech and a pilot, the actual workings of missions, uptime and downtime, combat, all the different rules. And then you have the GM's toolkit towards the center, but then it's also surrounded by a compendium with equipment and then the lore building stuff at the very end. I would rank character creation in Lancer as being medium in its complexity. The actual process of creating a character and a mech is rather easy, but there are quite a number of choices to make as you rank up your license. So while at LL0 it might be easy, it does kind of ramp up later just with the amount of choices and bookkeeping that you're going to have to do. When you do create a character in Lancer, you're really creating two: the pilot and the mech. When creating a pilot, you choose a background, triggers, take note of the pilot's stats, and then you choose gear. If there was ever a gripe that I had with the layout for this section, it's the fact that the actual steps for this process is at the end of the section. There is a list of steps at the beginning of the chapter as well, but they kind of mix both the pilots and the mech process without really differentiating between the two. The first thing you determine when creating your pilot is choosing a background. The book gives you about 20 to choose from, but the main focus of these backgrounds are the triggers. Triggers are your pilot's training and personality. If you set out to do something and a trigger could be applied, then you get a +2 accuracy bonus. For example, let's say my pilot gets involved in a bar fight. I could apply fist to faces for a +2 accuracy bonus. After choosing a background, you choose 4 triggers at +2 for your pilot. The book also has some sample triggers, but you can create your own with your GM's permission. Your pilot does start off with some stats that you do need to keep track of as well. For example, your pilot is considered half size. They have 6 HP, 10 evasion, 10 E defense, and 4 speed. You get to choose your pilot's gear as the last step. Pilots can have an armor, 2 weapons, and 3 other pieces of gear. Weapons come in 3 different flavors: archaic, alloy composite melee weapons, and signature ranged weapons. Each category has a specific type, such as light, medium, or heavy. I really like how these weapons can also have a notable feature. Hard suits serve as your armor, and they come in light, assault, heavy, mobility, and stealth. Mobility and stealth hard suits are interesting in that they don't provide a bonus to your HP, but they will either provide flight or invisibility. For other gear, we have limited and miscellaneous. For example, part of the limited pilot gear is things like frag grenades or stims, while miscellaneous gear can be things like camo cloth, data plating, extra rations, info skins, or even a stereo that you can use. There's a little bit more involved when creating a mech, but it's made simple by the fact that everyone starts at license level 0, and they also start off with a GMS SP1 Everest mech frame. This limits your choices, yes, but it also prevents new players from being overwhelmed by the many choices made available once they level up and begin looking at other frames available to them. When you create a mech, you're going to start by picking out your frame. But remember, at LL0, you're basically locked into the GMS SP1 Everest. Then you're going to add bonuses from your mech skills, and at LL0, your character starts with 2 points to spend for mech skills. There are 4 different mech skills to choose from: hull, agility, systems, and engineering. But when you level up 1, there's a variety of things that it affects. For example, when you put a point into hull, you're actually getting 2 HP per point. You'll also get +1 repair cap for 2 points. For agility, you get +1 evasion per point and +1 speed per 2 points. For systems, you get +1 attack and E defense per point and +1 SP per 2 points. And for engineering, we have +1 heat cap per point and +1 use for limited gear for every 2 points. Since we don't have grit until LL1, we can actually skip this step. Next, we'll pick weapons and allocate them to our frame's available mounts. Remember, since we're starting out at LL0, we can only choose from the GMS weapons list. Next, we choose systems up to our SP. At LL0, you can only choose from the GMS systems list, just like with your weapons. We don't get any core bonuses until LL3, so we can skip this step, but we do need to write down our relevant talents. So at LL0, we're going to have 3 rank 1 talents. And once we do that, we're actually done. Speaking of general massive systems, there are a number of core bonuses. For example, we have the auto-stabilizing hardpoints. Choose 1 mount. Weapons attached to this mount gain +1 accuracy. Overpower caliber. Choose 1 weapon. Once per round, when you hit with an attack, you can cause it to deal +1d6 bonus damage. We have improved armament. If your mech has fewer than 3 mounts, it gains an additional flexible mount. We also have integrated weapon, so your mech gains a new integrated mount with capacity for 1 auxiliary weapon. We have mount retrofitting, so you can replace 1 mount with a main auxiliary mount. And then we have universal compatibility. Anytime you spend CP to activate a core system, you may also take a free action to restore all HP, cool all heat, and roll 1d20. On a 20, regain 1 CP. In terms of the GMS general market systems, we actually have a variety to choose from. Even since we're all starting off on the same page, you can still actually have a bit of variety in your party composition. For example, we can have things like smoke charges, deployable cover, hex charges, or even turret drones. We can also get a GMS flight systems, so this will allow our mech to kind of fly and hover around. Aside from general massive systems, there are 4 other major mech manufacturers: IPS Northstar, Smith Shimano Corpro, Horus, and Harrison Armory. IPS Northstar are the anti-pirate guys. These mechs are a good choice for pilots who want a tough chassis that's built for close quarters and melee combat situations, such as when the possibility of reaching a ship hull is on the table. These chassis are sturdy, meant to take as much damage as they deal, and then some. For core bonuses, we have things like the Briareos frame. As long as your mech has no more than 1 structure, you gain resistance to all damage. Fomorian frame, increase your mech's size by 1 increment up to a maximum of 3 size. Also, we can't be knocked prone, pulled, or knocked back by smaller characters, regardless of what system or weapons causes the effect. We have the Gygas frame, so you gain +1 accuracy on all hull checks and saves, and +1 threat with all melee weapons. We have Reinforced frame, which gives us a flat-out +5 HP. Sloped plating, so we gain +1 armor, up to a maximum of 4. And Titanomachy flesh. Once per round, when you successfully ram or grapple a mech, you can ram or grapple again as a free action. In terms of the mechs themselves, we have things like the Blackbeard and the Assault Grapples. They use the Omni Harpoon quick action. The system fires grappling harpoons at any number of targets within a straight line of 5 and line of sight. Affected characters must succeed on a hull save or take 2d6 kinetic damage and be knocked prone, then pulled adjacent to you or as close as possible. They become immobilized until the end of their next turn. On a success, they take half damage and are otherwise unaffected. Then we have the Drake with the Fortress Protocol. You deploy heavy stabilizers and your mech becomes more like a fortified emplacement than a vehicle. When activated, 2 sections of hard cover unfold from your mech, drawn in any direction. These cover sections have immunity to all damage. Then we have the Lancaster, which is a latch drone. So this weapon can't make normal attacks. Instead, choose an allied mech within range and line of sight and make a range attack against evasion 8. On a hit, either you or your target may spend 1 repair to restore half your target's HP. They also have Supercharger as a quick action. Your latch drone clamps onto an allied mech within its range. For the rest of the scene, you take 1 heat at the start of each of your turns, but your target gains +1 accuracy on all attacks, checks, and saves, and immunity to the impaired, jammed, slowed, shredded, and immobilized conditions from characters other than itself. This effect ends if either character becomes stunned. Then we have the Nelson with the Perpetual Momentum Drive. For the rest of the scene, Skirmisher allows you to move 4 spaces at a time instead of 1 space. And Skirmisher says after attacking, the Nelson can immediately move 1 space in any direction as long as it isn't immobilized or slowed. This movement ignores engagement and doesn't provoke reactions. We have the Rayleigh with the M35 Mjolnir cannon. So once per round, when you reload any weapon, this weapon can be fired as a free action. And they also have the Thunder God Protocol. You start to spin your M35 Mjolnir up, beginning with no chambered rounds. For the rest of the scene, you load 2 rounds into chambers at the end of any of your turns in which you haven't fired the M35 Mjolnir. It can hold a maximum of 6 rounds. When you fire the M35 Mjolnir, all chambers fire simultaneously, dealing 4 kinetic damage per loaded round. If you fire 4 or more rounds at once, the attack gains AP, and on a hit, your target becomes shredded until the end of their next turn. We have the Tortuga with the Watchdog Co-Pilot and Hyper Reflex Mode Protocol. So for the rest of the scene, if you have less than 3 on a ranged weapon, it increases to 3. Once per round, you may take an additional Overwatch reaction, and any character you hit with Overwatch becomes immobilized until the end of their next turn. Last but not least, we have Vlad with the Shrike Armor and the Tormentor Spines Protocol. So for the rest of this scene, you gain resistance to all damage originating within 3, and Shrike Armor deals 3 kinetic AP instead of 1. Shrike Armor, by the way, says when a character within 3 attacks the Vlad, the attacker first gains 1 kinetic AP. Next, we have the Smith Shimano Corpro. Smith Shimano frames reflect the Corpro estate's pedigree and its agile, adaptable business model. They are built not to take hits, though they're resilient enough, but to avoid them entirely. SSC designs emphasize mobility and sleek profiles, precisely tuned to land not the hardest hit, but the most accurate. Economy, precision, and singularity is the name of the game for this manufacturer. Why fire 1,000 rounds when one can be just as effective? The mechs developed by SSC are known for their license exclusivity, appealing silhouette, and exacting design. Their Luxe iconic line of chassis are coveted, single designer models, each unique to the pilot with the requisite licenses and access to afford them. As such, unlike other manufacturers, SSC frames tend to be longer lasting in service, with more emphasis on retrofitting and repair than recycling and reproduction. Some of their core bonuses include all theater movement suite, so you may choose to count any and all of your movement as flying. However, you take 1 heat at the end of each of your turns in which you fly this way. They have full subjectivity sync, so you gain +2 evasion. Then you have Ghost Weave, so during your turn, you turn invisible. There's the Integrated Nerve Weave, so you may move an additional 2 spaces when you boost. And there's the Kai Bioplating, so you gain +1 accuracy on all agility checks and saves. Then there's the Neuralink Targeting, so your ranged weapons gain +3 range. In terms of mech frames, we have things like the Black Witch with the Magnetic Field Projector and the Mag Field Full Action. The system projects a 3-blast magnetic field with at least 1 space adjacent to you, causing the following effects until the end of your next turn. The affected area is difficult terrain. Range attacks that deal kinetic or explosive damage can't enter or leave the affected area. Projectiles stop at the edge, doing no damage. Record each attack stopped this way. Mechs and other characters made at least partly of metal that start their turn in the affected area or enter it for the first time in a round must succeed on a hull save or be pulled as close to the center as possible and become immobilized. We have Death's Head and the Precognitive Targeting System with the Neural Shunt Protocol. So for the rest of this scene, you gain the Mark for Death action. And Mark for Death says choose a character within 30 but further than 5 to focus on. While focusing, you become immobilized and can't take reactions, but you deal bonus damage based on weapon size. On range, critical hits against them as long as they aren't in cover or within 5. You may only focus on one character at a time. As a protocol, you may cease focusing on a target. Next we have Duskwing with the Dyad Articulation and the Hall of Mirrors Protocol. For the rest of the scene, whenever you start a unique movement during your turn, you leave a holographic imprint of yourself behind in the space from which you started. These are illusory objects the same size as you that have immunity to all damage and effects and aren't obstructions. Then we have Metal Mark with the Tactical Cloak system. Tactical Cloak is a protocol that says you are invisible for the rest of the scene. That's pretty much it, but also powerful in its own way. Then we have the Monarch with the SSC-30 High Penetration Missile System and the Divine Punishment Full Action. Choose any number of characters within 50. Your targets must each succeed on an agility save or take 1d6 plus 4 explosive damage. On a success, they take half damage. These self-guiding missiles can reach any target as long as there is a path to do so. Next, we have the Morning Cloak with the EX Slipstream module. They have access to the Blink Space Jump full action, so they can teleport to a space within 3d6. You don't require line of sight, but attempts to teleport to occupied spaces cause you to remain stationary and lose this action. And they also have the Stabilized Singularity protocol, so for the rest of the scene, you teleport when you boost or make a standard move. Last but not least, we have the Swallowtail mech frame with the Cloud Scout Taxim Swarms and the Prophetic Interjection protocol, which says gain the Tactical Simulation reaction for the rest of the scene. Tactical Simulation is a reaction that triggers when an allied character in line of sight takes damage from another character in line of sight. You get to roll 1d6. On a 4 and up, the attack was actually a simulation predicted by your processor. Your ally gains resistance to all damage dealt by the attack and may teleport up to 3 spaces, representing their true location. Next, we have Horus. Horus licenses are highly coveted and are distributed according to no discernible requirements. Scholars and specialists who study Horus generally assume that the collective's licenses, that is, access to deep-level designs, specifications, and print patterns, are available only in limited quantities, like becoming available after the corporeal death of their previous holders. Horus mechs universally field mysterious, unregulated, gray space technologies, perfect for pilots seeking a technological edge that few other organizations can provide. They seem to focus on crowd control, individual unit management, and terribly powerful systems. Be aware that by seeking out Horus technology, you may find yourselves wrapped up in the mysteries with no end, and dangers far beyond your deepest fears. Horus core bonuses include the Lessons of Disbelief. You gain +1 accuracy on systems, checks, and saves, and +2 E-defense. There's the Lesson of the Open Door. So your save target increases by +2. Additionally, once per round, when a character fails a save against you, they take 2 heat. There's the Lesson of the Held Image. Once per round, as a reaction, at the start of an allied character's turn, you may make a lock-on tech action against any character within line of sight and sensors. There's the Lesson of Thinking Tomorrow's Thought. When you hit with a tech attack, your next melee attack against the same target gains +1 accuracy, and its damage can't be reduced in any way. Then there's the Lesson of the Transubstantiation. Anytime you take structure damage, you disappear into a non-space and cease to be a valid target. You reappear in the same space at the start of your next turn. If that space is occupied, you reappear in the nearest available free space. And then there's the Lesson of Shaping. You may install an additional AI in your mech. If one enters Cascade, the other prevents it from taking control of your mech. You only lose control of your mech if both AI tagged systems or equipment enter Cascade. In terms of mech designs, we have things like the Baylor with Hellswarm and the Hive Frenzy protocol. Your nanites switch into a hyperactive mode, causing the following effects until the end of the scene. You and adjacent allies gain soft cover, Scouring Swarm deals 4 kinetic damage instead of 2, Regeneration restores half of your total HP instead of a quarter. If you would take structure damage, roll 1d6. On a 6, your mech hellishly pulls itself together. You become shredded and cannot clear this condition for the duration. Then there's the Goblin with Instinct Rig and the Symbiosis Quick Action. Your mech retracts its major systems and attaches itself to another mech, becoming more like a vestigial blister than a separate entity. The host must be an allied and willing mech not already hosting another Goblin, larger than and adjacent to you. While attached, you occupy their space, move with them, and benefit from hard cover, but can still be attacked and targeted separately. You also take any conditions in heat systems by the host. Your host may use your system's E-defense and tech attack instead of their own. This effect lasts either for the rest of the scene until you detach as a quick action, or until you or your host become stunned. When the effect ends, you don't take a turn until the next round. Then we have the Gorgon with the Basilisk Directed Anti-Cognition Hyperfractal and the Extrude Basilisk Quick Action. You project a horrifying basilisk, a visual data pattern that is incredibly harmful to NHPs and electronic systems and hard to look at even for humans. For the rest of the scene, hostile characters must succeed on a system save before attacking you or any allied characters with 3. On a failure, they become stunned until the end of their next turn. Each character can only be stunned by this effect once per scene. We have the Hydra with the Orochi disarticulation core system and the Orochi drones. There's 4 different drones that you can use, such as the Guardian drone, a Snare drone, a Shredder drone, and a Hunter drone. But as a quick action, you can fully deploy them. So all 4 Orochi drones are deployed to separate points within Sensor's range. They remain active for the rest of the scene. You may recall or redeploy any number of them at any time. Then there's the Manicore with the Charged Exoskeleton system. Charged Exoskeleton says once per round when you take heat, you may deal 2 energy AP to a character within 3. Then they also have the Destruction of the Temple of the Enemies of Ra protocol. Your mech crackles with energy, gain resistance to heat for the rest of the scene, and a charge die, 1d6, starting at 1. Whenever you take heat or energy damage, even from yourself, increase the value of the charge die by 1. When the charge die reaches 6, the absorbed energy discharges in a burst to Inferno. Characters within the affected area must succeed on an engineering save or take 66 energy AP. On a success, they take half damage. Objects in the affected areas are automatically hit. Once discharged, this effect ends. Then we have the Minotaur with the Metafold Maze. When you hit with a tech attack, you may activate this system, causing your target to become slowed until the end of your next turn. If they are already slowed, they become immobilized until the end of your next turn. If they're already immobilized, they become stunned until the end of your next turn. Each character can only be stunned by this effect once per combat, but can be slowed or immobilized any number of times. And they also have the Maze full action. Choose a character within Sensors. They become stunned as you hurl their system into metaphysical information traps so tangled they can do nothing but try and escape. At the end of their next turn, they can make a system save at +3 difficulty. On a success, they are no longer stunned. This save can be repeated at the end of each of their turns, gaining +1 accuracy each time until successful. And last but not least, we have the Pegasus with the Ujapti Omnigun. Your mech's Omnigun is a piece of experimental hardware so advanced that it defies physics. It doesn't require a mount, nor does it have a weapon type or size, meaning that it can't be modified or benefit from your talents. You can't attack normally with this weapon. Instead, once per round as a free action during your turn, you can use it to deal 1 kinetic AP damage to a character within range and line of sight. This doesn't count as an attack. It hits automatically, ignores cover, and bypasses immunity, and its damage can't be reduced or ignored in any way. No rule in this book or any other supersedes this. And finally, we have the Harrison Armory. By necessity of Harrison Armory's imperial aims, its frames tend to be sturdy. More than that, Armory mechs are built to ensure overwhelming performance, embodying dominance and power in their brutal geometric aesthetics. This fulfillment of this desire requires tremendous power, skill, and material strength. Harrison Armory licenses are perfect for pilots looking to field durable frontline mechs equipped with the most advanced weapons technology available. Some of Harrison Armory's core bonuses include Adaptive Reactor, so when you stabilize and choose to cool your mech, you may spend 2 repairs to clear 1 stress damage. There's Armory Sculpted Chassis, so you gain +1 accuracy on all engineering checks and saves. When you overcharge, you gain soft cover until the start of your next turn. There's Heatfall Coolant System, so your cost for overcharge never goes past 1d6 heat. There's Integrated Ammo Feed, so all limited systems and weapons gain an additional 2 charges. There's Stasis Shielding, so whenever you take stress damage, you gain resistance to all damage until the start of your next turn. And they're superior by design, so you gain immunity to impaired and gain +2 heat cap. Some of the mech frames under Harrison Armory include the Barbarossa with the Apocalypse Rail. When activated, you start charging the Barbarossa's Apocalypse Rail, an incredibly powerful ship-to-ship long spool weapon system that requires target calibration. Gain an Apocalypse die, 1d6 starting at 4. At the start of each of your turns, lower the value of the Apocalypse die by 1 to a minimum of 1. If you move, even involuntarily, or become stunned or jammed, the Apocalypse die resets to 4 and then continues to count down as normal. If the value of the Apocalypse die is 1 to 3, you can attack on your turn with the Apocalypse Rail as a full action. And each of the different values has different ranges and different damage dice associated with it. There's the Genghis with the TBK sustained suite and the exposed power cells quick action. The next time you exceed your heat cap this scene, you instead clear all heat and vent a 3-burst cloud of burning matter from your mech. Until the start of your next turn, all characters within the affected area count as invisible to everyone except you, and characters other than you take 2 burning and 2 heat when they start their turn in the area or enter it for the first time in a round. There's the Iskander with the broad sweep cedar and the death cloud quick action. The system fires an enormous expanding cloud of micro mines across the whole battlefield, affecting all hostile characters within 50. For the rest of the scene, when hostile characters make any movement other than their standard move, they take 3 explosive AP damage. This effect can trigger any number of times, but only once per round for each character. There's the Napoleon with the True Black Aegis and the Activate Aegis quick action. A shimmering, utterly black field quickly envelops your mech, covering it like a second skin. For the rest of the scene, you reduce all damage to 1, except for damage that ignores reduction. You gain immunity to all tech actions. You can only use systems with the shield tag. You can't take quick actions, full actions, or reactions, except for standard moves, grapple, ram, improvise attack, activate, skill check, and boost. You also can't overcharge, and you can't use comms to talk to other characters. You can still receive statuses and heat and can be affected by involuntary movement. You can otherwise interact normally with the world, including picking up and dragging items and so on. Then there's the Saladin with the Tachyon Loop and the Tachyon Shield quick action. This system projects an accelerated Tachyon Shield over an allied character within sensors. You may choose a new target as a quick action. Gain the defensive pulse reaction for the rest of the scene, and the defensive pulse says, when your target is attacked, you can empower their Tachyon Shield with a pulse of energy. They gain resistance to all damage from the attack, and if the attack misses, you may force the attacker to reroll it against a character or object of your choice. Then there's the Sherman with the Zone Focus Mark IV Solid Core. This weapon's profile is determined by the number of charges it carries. It begins with 1 charge, dealing 1d6 energy with a line of 4. Each time you stabilize, you gain an additional 1 charge up to a maximum of 4. The ZF4 gains an additional plus 4 range and 1d6 energy damage for each charge and resets to 1 charge after each attack. Charges persist between scenes but are lost during a full repair. Last but not least, we have the Tokugawa with the superheated reactor feed core system. They have the overclock protocol, which says you can cause your mech to become exposed until the end of your next turn, and they also have the radiance protocol. So for the rest of this scene, any weapons that deal energy damage gain plus 5 range if they are ranged, or plus 2 if they are melee. While you're exposed, limit break stacks with these bonuses for a total increase of plus 10 range and plus 3 for melee. Lancer makes use of 2 different modes of play. We have narrative play and mech combat. When you're out of the mech, you're likely to use narrative play. In this mode, your pilot makes use of the triggers for skill checks. When you need to make a skill check, simply roll a d20 and add any triggers, either at plus 2, plus 4, or plus 6. If the total is a 10 or over, you succeed. While the target number never changes, the GM can declare a skill challenge as being difficult or risky. On a difficult skill check, add plus 1 difficulty, meaning when you roll a d20, you also roll a d6 and subtract the number from the d20. On a risky skill check, you will always have a consequence associated even if you roll above a 10. The exception to this is if you roll above a 20. Likewise, there are heroic skill checks where the only way to succeed is to roll a 20 or over. You can choose to push a failed roll, meaning you get another chance to succeed, but this turns into a risky roll. This does mean that you can't push a roll if it's already risky. If you get into a fight in narrative play, such as when a pilot decides to take things into their own hands, you're still going to go through the process as described already, but you'll also need to worry about your pilot's HP. If your pilot takes damage, then it will either be minor, 1 to 2, major, 3 to 5, or lethal, 6 and above. By the way, if you get hit with the lethal damage at LL0, you're pretty much screwed, so yeah, try not to get hit. If your pilot is reduced to 0 HP, then you roll a d6. On a 6, your pilot barely shrugs off the hit, or it's a close call. They return to 1 HP. On a 2 through 5, your pilot gains the down and out status and remains at 0 HP. They're pretty much unconscious. On a 1, your pilot's luck has run out. They die immediately. Also, you don't have to worry about tracking NPC health. If your pilot is trying to kill someone and you succeed on the roll, it simply happens. Now, let's talk about mech combat. This is where tactical gameplay takes place, mostly in a mech. It's assumed that you're going to be playing on a gridded map, and as such, you'll need to think about the size of not only your pilot, but other mechs as well. You see, mechs can range from being a size 1/2 to 4. Initiative is simple. A player acts first and then switches back and forth between the players and the GM. Players can discuss who takes their turn, but it always passes back and forth, so player, GM, and so on and so forth. On your turn, you can move and either perform a full action or 2 quick actions. A full action can include things like barrage, disengage, full tech, improvised attack, or stabilize. A quick action can include things like boost, grapple, hide, quick tech, bolster, scan, lock on, invade, ram, search, and skirmish. There are also free actions, reactions, and overcharge. Overcharge allows a mech to make an additional quick action at the cost of heat. Some of the other actions that we also have available to us are things like activate, boot up, mount, dismount, and eject, prepare, self-destruct, that's always a fun one, shut down, and skill checks. There are 3 types of attacks: melee, ranged, and tech attacks. For melee attacks, you have to choose a target within the weapon's threat and make a melee attack roll by rolling 1d20, plus grit and any accuracy or difficulty bonuses. To hit, they must match or beat the target's evasion. It should be noted that melee attacks ignore cover. For ranged attacks, you choose a target within the weapon's range and in line of sight, and then you make a ranged attack roll by rolling 1d20, plus grit and any other accuracy or difficulty bonuses. To hit, they must match or beat the target's evasion. If you are adjacent to the hostile targets, you take +1 difficulty. When firing into soft cover, you take +1 difficulty and +2 difficulty in hard cover. For tech attacks, you choose a target within your sensors and line of sight, and then make a tech attack roll by rolling 1d20 plus tech attack and any accuracy or difficulty bonuses. To hit, you must match or beat the target's E defense. Like melee attacks, tech attacks ignore cover. And like with most RPGs, crits are a thing. If the result is above a 20, then you crit and all damage dice are rolled twice. Combat in this mode is tactical and very much in-depth. You'll need to worry about cover and obstruction, armor, and the range of your weapons. Now, despite this being called mech combats, pilots can do things themselves, although this is very, very stupid, so don't do it. Actions taken by pilots draw from the same pool, 1 standard move and 2 quick actions or 1 full action, as actions taken by their mechs. You can split your actions between pilot and mech if you so choose. You could, for instance, take a quick action to skirmish with your mech, take a quick action to eject, and then use your move to run to cover on foot. Pilots also have 3 special actions that they can do: fight, jockey, and reload. Now, let's say you are reduced to 0 HP while in a mech. That doesn't mean you are down and out just yet. Mechs have a structure score of 4, at least for PCs. When a mech is reduced to 0 HP, they take a point of structure damage. Make a structure damage check by rolling a number of d6s equal to structure damage marked, including the one you just took, and then you consult the chart. Then you reset your mech HP back to full and take any leftover damage, if any. Another form of damage is heat. Mechs have a heat cap, which is the amount of stress it can take on its systems. Like with HP and structure, player mechs have 4 stress. When their heat reaches 0, they roll a stress check by rolling a number of d6s equal to the amount of stress damage marked and consult the chart, and then clear all heat. It should be noted that 2 of the results on the chart include a meltdown, so fun times to be had there. When you need to make repairs, they just happen, if you're back at base, that is. If you need to attempt field repairs, your mech has a repair cap. This is how many times you can perform a repair when outside of the base. Death can be a thing, but cloning is also a thing in this universe, so now you don't have to create a twin brother who inherits your mech. Wait a minute, didn't Gundam do that once? I'm pretty sure they did. If you do opt for the clone route, they may come back with a quirk. Likewise, if a player goes down and out, they might also take a quirk too, although this is an optional rule. Given that there are only 20 quirks listed, I wouldn't opt into this unless you're willing to create your own. Combat is not all there is to do in Lancer. PCs will get downtime in between missions. Downtime actions can include things like power at a cost, so you're trying to get your hands on something, you can buy some time, gather information, You can get a damn drink, get creative, get focused, get organized, get connected, and scrounge and barter. Let's take a look at the GM's toolkit. These are the things to help a GM run the game, from advice on pacing to creating NPCs. There is quite a bit of advice for new GMs, and if you are completely new to running games, then this is certainly worth a read. There really isn't anything that is new or groundbreaking, although we do get some advice on how to structure fights and how many fights PCs should be able to survive before resting. If you need some inspiration for missions, then there are some mission hooks, but they're pretty vague, so expect to do a lot of the work here. Then again, I believe such things are supposed to serve their inspiration, so let your creativity take hold and flow. Something that is bizarrely interesting is the concept of sit reps. This makes combat more objective focused and almost like a miniature war game with its use of deployment zones and objectives placed around the map. There are 6 different sit reps, such as control, escort, extraction, gauntlet, holdout, and recon. Each has their own rules and victory conditions. It is certainly an interesting concept and keeps combat fresh. It's just good solid advice on running combat in general. There are random tables for creating worlds, but honestly, it isn't anything groundbreaking or good. I prefer other systems that are a little more in-depth. By far the most useful section for GMs is the section on creating NPCs. While NPCs are built differently, they still have the same basic actions that are available to PCs, such as boost, grapple, hide, prepare, skirmish, ram, quick tech, and search. They also have full actions like barrage, disengage, full tech, improvise attack, and stabilize, and the overwatch reaction. It should be worth noting though that most NPCs have one structure and are destroyed when they reach 0 HP. NPCs deal a fixed amount of damage instead of rolling dice, and most NPCs can't perform crit hits. Some NPCs like mechs have a heat cap, and some NPCs don't have a heat cap. So they take heat as energy damage, so be aware of which one you're dealing with. To create an NPC, you just need to follow a few simple steps. You're going to choose a class, then you'll choose 0 to 2 optional systems for that class. You'll choose a tier and set their statistics accordingly. You'll choose and apply a template, if applicable, and then you'll customize them with new names and flavor, if applicable. So here we have classes by role, and the different roles are things like artillery, controllers, defenders, strikers, and support. So for artillery, we have bombard, operator, rainmaker, and sniper. For controller, we have archer, barricade, hive, hornet, cedar, and witch. Under defenders, we have bastion, demolisher, Goliath, pyro, and sentinel. Under strikers, we have ace, assassin, assault, berserker, breacher, cataphract, engineer, ronin, spectre, and scour. And then under support, we have aegis, mirage, priest, scout, and support. So let's take a quick look at one of these classes. So for the ace, which is a striker role, we have 3 different tiers that we're working with. So they progress in terms of difficulty for the PCs. For tier 1, we're going to have things like -2 hull, systems +1, agility +3, and engineering +0, with 10 HP, 0 armor, 12 evasion, 8 E defense, 5 speed, 1 size, 8 for the heat cap, 10 for the save target, and then 10 for sensors. For tier 2, we bump up some of the stats a little bit, such as evasion and HP, and for tier 3, we bump up some of their stats even more. And you can see that things like agility goes up each time we climb up a tier. We do have the base systems that are afforded to the ace, but we also have some optional systems. So if you really want to make things a little bit more difficult for your players, you're going to add some of these optional systems, such as a bombing bay, a strafe trait, missile swarm, rapid response, or chaff launchers. Next, we have these templates that we can also attach to our NPCs, and these pretty much bump up the difficulty a little bit. So we have things like the commander, and some of their features are things like reinforced, voice of authority, commander traits, bolster network, press the attack, press on, quick march, and military discipline. Then we have RPVs, elite, exotic. We have grunts. So if you're looking to make a NPC that's like a moot or something really easy for your players to just rip apart, you're going to give them the grunt template and features. We have mercenary, pirates, ships. If you're turning your mech into a ship or something like that, then you'll apply these as well. we have Spacer, and Ultra. So if you want a boss monster or a boss type ship or mech, then you're going to apply some of these to that class and role that you've picked out. Likewise, there's the Veteran, although I don't think this one is nearly as strong as the Ultra. I think Ultra is the most powerful that you can have. And then we have Vehicles. The last section is a detailed history of the Lancer universe. If you plan on playing in the established universe, then you'll want to read all 80 pages of textbook style lore. Have fun with that, by the way. I do want to take a moment to point out how well put together the presentation for this book is. There's a lot of stuff here, and it could have been a great chore to read. In fact, the only section I felt that really was a chore to read through was the section on Lancer history, because it's written like a history textbook with some artwork spread out in between, but still, that's a lot of stuff, like 80 pages worth. Stat blocks are the real hero of this rule book. It's colorful and somewhat easy to read. Some of the abilities are going to be a little bit more complicated than others, but that's what you get with a tactical combat system. Then there's the artwork. It's very well done, and the style is somewhat consistent. I really enjoyed the artwork for each of the mech designs. They are distinct, and they really lend themselves to the flavor of the universe. And each mech actually is represented by different artwork too, so you get a feel for what you're getting into. If you're looking for an exciting tactical game that's focused on mech combat, then this game is obviously for you. You can strip it of its lore and use it for whatever you want. I personally don't like that everything is just kind of given to the players whenever they buy a new license. I much prefer an economy system where the players have to really scrounge for everything that they can get. Then again, if I really wanted to run the system as written, then I most definitely would do something along the lines of like G Gundam, where the PCs are players in some sort of a mech combat arena. This rule set can seem a little bit daunting for new players, but the book actually does a good job at keeping everything, or most of the systems, contained at license level 0. If you have more experienced players who have maybe played Lancer a time or two, then you could definitely start them off at LL1. I didn't even mention comp/con, which is Lancer's online player and mech generator. You could actually just use Discord and comp/con, and you'd be fine just running the game as is. You don't really need Roll20 or any other virtual tabletop space to play this game, which is actually really cool. It's really easy to use, and that's actually the best part. Would I ever run Lancer for my gaming group? Well, that's actually a really tough question, because I think this game really caters itself to a group that wants more complexity in their role-playing systems. It's not that it's number crunchy, there's just a lot to keep track of and a lot to plan for in terms of abilities and other mechs and things like that. If you play games with the type of players who really like to customize things with mods and just interesting choices, then yes, Lancer is going to be right up their alley, so long as they like mechs and science fiction. I would highly recommend this system for anyone who likes that complexity or just modding things and really getting down to the nitty-gritty of customization. That's going to do it for this video. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to support the series, and I will see you guys in the next video.